The studio lights dim slightly as the announcer's voice echoes through the room, "Please welcome, Clint Eastwood." The audience erupts into applause, some rising to their feet, excited to see the Hollywood legend. The curtains part slowly. From the shadows steps Clint Eastwood, wearing a rugged brown jacket over a black shirt, his unmistakable glare fixed straight ahead. He walks with a steady, firm stride, each step echoing slightly on the polished stage floor. His face is stern, unreadable. The applause softens as people realize Clint isn't smiling, isn't waving. He stops in front of Stephen Colbert's desk without saying a word, his hands casually in his pockets. The silence lingers for just a second too long, creating an odd air of tension. Colbert, ever the showman, stretches an awkward grin across his face and says, well, the man, the myth, the legend. Clint Eastwood, everybody." Clint raises a brow slightly, still silent. He finally takes a seat, legs crossed, eyes focused. The energy feels off. Colbert, trying to read the vibe, chuckles and says, "Clint, I gotta say, it's an honor to have you here. I mean, you've been making movies since my dad had sideburns." A few audience members laugh politely. Clint doesn't. He tilts his head slightly, giving Colbert a half-smile that feels more like a warning than appreciation. Colbert clears his throat and keeps the banter going. "So, you've got a new film coming out, unless of course, you're just here to shoot me with those eyes." Still, Clint offers no warm laugh, no chuckle. Just a flat, "I'm here because someone thought it'd be interesting." The audience doesn't know whether to laugh or stay quiet. Colbert tries again. "Well, I'm glad you agreed. Although I was told I might need body armor." That gets a few real laughs. But Clint leans forward slightly and says in a cool tone, "Don't worry. I don't shoot comedians, unless they forget to be funny." The smile on Colbert's face falters. The camera pans to the audience, where people are smiling nervously, some whispering to each other. The mood isn't hostile, but it isn't light either. It's tense, unpredictable. Clint's energy has thrown off the usual rhythm of late-night banter. Colbert reaches for his note cards, hoping to steer the conversation, but even he knows, this isn't going to be a typical interview. The legend has arrived, but he didn't come to play nice. And from the look in his eyes, everyone on set can tell, something explosive is just around the corner. Stephen Colbert glances down at his note cards, clearly trying to reset the mood after Clint's ice-cold responses. He shifts in his chair and says, "All right Clint, let's talk about something real. You've always been outspoken about certain topics, and I think that's one of the reasons people respect you. So let me ask, what's your take on the whole gun control debate in America right now?" A small murmur rolls through the crowd. Clint doesn't blink. He leans back slowly, folding his arms across his chest. The silence stretches for a beat longer than expected. Then, with that unmistakable gravel in his voice, he replies, "You're asking the wrong question." Colbert raises an eyebrow, playing along. "Oh, what's the right one?" Clint stares him down, voice even but sharp. "The right question is, why do people like you think the government knows what's best for every man and woman in this country?" The temperature in the studio seems to drop 10 degrees. Colbert smiles, attempting to keep things light. "Well, I guess we just want to keep people safe, Clint. You know, stop the bad guys from getting guns." Clint cuts him off with a slight hand gesture, firm and dismissive. "Bad guys don't follow rules. That's what makes them bad. What you're doing is trying to punish the good ones for the actions of criminals." The audience doesn't quite know how to react. Some clap hesitantly, others stay quiet. Colbert, sensing a controversial moment turning live, tries to pivot. "But isn't there room for regulation? I mean, background checks, safety protocols, surely you don't oppose all of it?" Clint narrows his eyes and responds in a slow, deliberate tone, "You ever been in a real situation where seconds count and help is minutes away? I have. That's why I don't wait for permission to protect myself or the people around me." The room tightens again. The tone has shifted from banter to confrontation. Colbert shifts uncomfortably, pressing on. "So you're saying more guns equals more safety?" Clint shrugs, stone-faced. "I'm saying freedom isn't safe. That's the point. It never was. You want safety, lock yourself in a padded room. But don't drag the rest of us into your fear." A low, oof, can be heard from someone in the crowd. The tension is thick now. Colbert tries to laugh it off. "I mean, you make it sound like we're all supposed to be living in the Wild West again." Clint finally cracks a grin, but not the warm kind. Maybe the Wild West wasn't so bad. At least folks were honest about who they were. That line hits hard. The audience goes quiet again. Colbert looks at the camera for a beat, then back to Clint. "You know, I expected you to be blunt, but man, you really bring the full Eastwood heat." Clint replies dryly, "If you can't handle a little heat, Stephen, maybe you picked the wrong line of work." The band in the corner chuckles nervously. Colbert smirks, but there's a flicker of unease in his eyes. He's starting to realize this interview is no longer under his control. Clint has turned the conversation into a battleground of principles, and he's not backing down. Stephen Colbert, sensing the intensity from Clint's last statement, tries to reset the tone with a nostalgic nod. With a sly grin, he reaches beneath his desk and pulls out a wooden chair, plain, lightweight, and immediately recognizable to anyone familiar with Clint Eastwood's infamous 2012 Republican National Convention speech. Holding it up like a prop, Colbert chuckles, "Now Clint, I didn't want to let this moment pass without bringing back an old friend. Remember this guy?" He places the chair next to his desk and pats it, laughing. The audience chuckles as well, some clapping. It's a lighthearted jab, a callback meant to shift the tone. But Clint doesn't laugh. His eyes lock onto the chair like it's an unwanted ghost from the past. Slowly, Clint stands up from his seat. The room immediately shifts. You can feel the crowd's reaction change from amusement to confusion, then anxiety. Colbert chuckles nervously. "Oh, what did I just unleash?" Clint walks over to the chair with deliberate calm, his boots thudding softly on the stage. The camera zooms in on his expression. It's unreadable, but serious. He stands over the chair, pauses, then, without warning, kicks it hard. The chair flies across the stage with a loud crack as it skids and topples near the band's setup. Gasps ripple through the audience. The band falls silent. Colbert flinches, taken aback. "Whoa, okay, that's one way to make a point." Clint turns slowly toward him, jaw tight. "You think this is a joke?" he says, voice low but cutting. "You think what I said back then doesn't matter now?" Colbert, now standing, tries to keep the mood light. "Clint, it was just a bit, comedy, you know." Clint doesn't blink. Comedy at the expense of the truth. That chair represented more than a punchline. The air is thick now. No one dares to laugh. Colbert, still trying to regain control, says, all right, maybe the chair thing has aged like milk, but come on, it's a moment people remember. That's something, right?" Clint glares. "They remember it because it said what nobody else would. You can dress it up, make it funny, play it for laughs, but what I said came from a place of principle. Something this country seems to be running short on." He returns to his seat, never taking his eyes off Colbert. The host sits down slowly, exhaling. "Okay then, noted. No chairs next time." A faint laugh escapes from someone in the back of the studio, awkward and uncertain. Colbert chuckles nervously. "See, we're still a comedy show. That was dramatic flair." But Clint's presence is overpowering. He leans back in his seat, voice suddenly quiet. "People laugh when they're uncomfortable. Doesn't make the truth go away." Colbert nods slightly, understanding he won't be able to steer this guest like others. Clint has flipped the energy of the show upside down, and now the audience watches not for laughs, but to see what will happen next. The tension lingers in the studio like static in the air. Stephen Colbert shifts in his seat, still a bit rattled from the chair incident, but determined to steer the show back into familiar waters. With a measured smile, he flips through his note cards, searching for something lighter. "All right," he says, forcing cheer into his tone, "let's talk about the legacy. You've directed, acted, produced, won Oscars, built legends, and inspired generations. How does it feel looking back at everything you've done?" Clint Eastwood sits still for a moment, almost as if considering the question. But instead of answering directly, he slowly leans forward, places his elbows on his knees, and stares directly into the lens of the main camera. The audience shifts uneasily as Clint begins to speak, not to Stephen, but to the viewers at home. "You want to know what it feels like," he says in that gravel-drenched voice. "It feels like watching your country get softer, louder, and more afraid with every passing year." Colbert chuckles nervously. "Well, that took a turn," he mutters, but Clint doesn't break eye contact with the camera. "We live in a world where strength offends people, where saying what you believe makes you dangerous, where leaders are actors, and actors pretend to be leaders." The audience is silent now, not even murmurs. It doesn't feel like a comedy show anymore. It feels like a moment of reckoning. Clint's voice doesn't rise, but every word hits with weight. Colbert clears his throat, trying to re-engage. "Okay, but surely there's still some hope in storytelling, right? Movies, entertainment, that shared experience." Clint finally looks back at him. Storytelling used to mean something. It used to teach, to challenge, to wake people up. Now it puts them to sleep. Wrapped in glitter, soaked in politics, and sold for likes. You call that hope? There's a noticeable stir among the audience. Some clearly uncomfortable, others captivated. Clint returns his gaze to the camera. "I didn't come here to promote a film. I came here because I still believe truth belongs somewhere, even if it's not welcome." Colbert raises his eyebrows, turning toward the control booth. The producers are visibly tense. His earpiece buzzes with chatter. Someone is telling him to cut to commercial. Music swells faintly as the cue begins, but Clint keeps talking, undeterred. "You can drown out anything with a jingle or a laugh track, but the truth doesn't care if you change the channel. It'll still be there, waiting." Colbert tries to interject. Okay folks, we're just going to take a quick, but Clint's voice surges again, not louder, but stronger. You ever ask yourself why people trust actors more than politicians? Because we don't pretend we're not acting. The music grows louder now, signaling the commercial break more urgently. The screen starts to fade, the show logo slowly appearing, but Clint's voice still echoes in the room. He hasn't stood, hasn't moved, but every person in the studio is holding their breath. Even Colbert sits back, momentarily at a loss. Clint leans back in his chair, calm, almost like he knew this would happen. The commercial takes over the broadcast, but the energy in the room doesn't reset. It builds, quietly, with everyone wondering what's going to happen when the cameras return. As the show returns from commercial, the camera cuts to Stephen Colbert sitting rigidly behind his desk, a nervous smile fixed on his face. The audience claps half-heartedly, unsure of what they're even applauding anymore. The air in the studio is stiff, unsettled. Clint Eastwood hasn't moved from his chair. He's sitting upright, arms folded, eyes sharp and unblinking. The producers in the control booth are scrambling behind the scenes, whispering urgently into headsets, unsure how to contain the unpredictable energy still radiating from the stage. Colbert attempts to smooth things over. And we're back with the legendary Clint Eastwood, still keeping us on our toes. He chuckles weakly. Clint says nothing. The silence lands like a hammer. Colbert forces himself to continue. Listen, Clint, we may not agree on everything, but we appreciate passionate voices here. That's part of the dialogue, right? Clint slowly turns to face him, face unreadable. Is that what this is? Dialogue, he asks, voice low and pointed. Because it feels more like you're filling time until the next joke lands. There's a barely audible gasp from somewhere in the audience. Colbert sits up straighter. Now hold on, he begins, his tone sharpening. This is a comedy show. It's supposed to be fun, entertaining. Clint interrupts him. At the expense of what? You bring guests on here, poke at their beliefs, then hide behind laughter when things get uncomfortable. You want entertainment. I brought honesty. Colbert's jaw clenches, his usual smirk slipping. We also bring people on to promote their work. Their films. You've got a new one coming out. Do you want to talk about it? Clint shakes his head slowly. Not if it means pretending we're all playing the same game. There's a pause. The audience is dead silent. No claps, no laughs, just eyes locked on the standoff unfolding. At this point, a pair of suited security staffers begins to edge out from the wings of the stage. They move slowly, trying not to draw attention, but everyone notices. Colbert glances at them briefly, then back to Clint. We appreciate you being here, truly, he says with a practiced finality. But I think we've probably covered enough for tonight. Clint rises from his chair. He doesn't look at the security. Doesn't even acknowledge them. He adjusts the cuff of his jacket, turns to face the audience, and says plainly, you don't have to agree with me. But you damn sure better listen. Because voices like mine won't be invited back much longer. The words hang in the air like a final verdict. He tips his head slightly, a nod of defiance, then walks off the stage without another word. The security guards pause, realizing he won't need escorting. He's already gone. The crowd gives a scattered, hesitant applause, unsure how to respond. Colbert stares for a beat, then flashes a smile that doesn't quite reach his eyes. Well, that was the Eastwood Experience, ladies and gentlemen. The band strikes up a song, too cheerful for the moment, as the credits begin to roll. But no one's watching the credits. They're still replaying what just happened, wondering if they witnessed an interview or a rebellion.